In the year of 1996, the British developer Codemasters has started development of a racing game based on the British Touring Car Championship. Back then, Codemasters already developed several racing games and even had a popular racing game series called Micro Machines, which was a top-down racer. During the 18 months of development, they worked closely with the BTCC's organizer TOCA to recreate the series in the game. The game was released for the PC and the original Sony Playstation in 1997 in Europe and North America in 1998. Also, there was a Game Boy Color port of the game which was released in 2000. And I think after my F1 2020 game review, it would be fitting to review one of the earlier Codemasters racing games and have a look back at how different racing games were back then. So let's get right into it. The game includes all the manufacturer teams, cars and drivers from the 1997 British Touring Car Championship. This includes cars like the dominant Audi A4 Quattro, the Volvo S40 or the awesome looking Porsche 406. You might have noticed that I said manufacturer teams. I think due to hardware limitations, Codemasters have decided to not include the privateer entries in the game. A big shame, to be honest, as it means that cars like the Vauxhall Cavalier or the BMW 318i are not included in this game. Could have made the car selection a bit better in my opinion. Furthermore, this game includes all the tracks from the 1997 calendar, including tracks like Donington, Knockhill or Croft, a new track in the calendar back then. In terms of game modes, you have the option to do a single race, which is self-explanatory, a time trial mode, and of course a 2-player split screen. The main mode of this game is the Championship mode, where you are going to complete a full 1997 British Touring Car Championship season with a car of your choice. But there are a few interesting notes for this mode. You need to gain the minimum number of points to keep going with your playthrough. If you miss out on the points goal, you're going to be fired straight away. And in my opinion, it's just stupid. I mean, I get the idea that it tries to get you to keep pushing flat out all the time, but in a real motorsport scene, it would not make any sense to fire a rookie after one race because he hasn't gained a minimum number of points. That is even worse than Red Bull's driver treatment. I think Pierre Gasly and Alex Albon can say something about that. Another interesting note is that you cannot choose the difficulty level for the championship mode, and as you can see by my number of points, it would have been a good idea to include a difficulty option. You know what they have built into the championship mode instead of a difficulty selection? A mechanism where the difficulty increases after a few races. I don't know what to think about that. I'm not really a fan of this idea, but it isn't game breaking, so it's acceptable I guess. When you win a championship, you unlock another game mode called TOCA Shootout. It's basically another championship, but this time with mirror tracks, which is actually a unique feature. And it also includes a difficulty option, which is quite nice. With the content out of the way, let's have a look into the gameplay, and we'll start with the physics. And to be honest, they aren't that bad, but they take a lot of time to get used to. The reason for this is that you need to be soft with the steering fast sections, because if you turn a bit too hard, you lose the car and you spin immediately. And here is some slight criticism. Whilst the handling itself is quite good from my perspective, I think casuals might be turned off by that, as they just want to drive and don't want to invest a lot of time into finding a perfect driving style, at least from my experience. But my biggest issue is that sometimes these spins do occur randomly and with no chance of recovering this. Yes, as I said, you have lost the car, you will spin completely. But when you get the hang of it and you find some sort of consistency, you will like the handling a lot. Furthermore, all cars feel different in terms of power and handling. I mean, there needs to be some sort of difference when you have a 4-wheel drive car on the grid. Another thing I like about this game is those well-designed tracks, at least for a PS1 game. Yes, I really think that nearly all tracks are good design from their real-life counterpart. However, there are a few corners, for example the first corner of Brands Hatch, which are so weirdly designed that you need to be really careful with your inputs. My favourite track in the game is Croft, and I swear I have not raced around this track before I played this game. And to be honest, I really got the hang of this track pretty quickly, and I really enjoyed driving it. Moreover, Codemasters have implemented the then brand new analog sticks quite well. I think that the analog steering is quite nice, and a lot more comfortable than the digital steering. Here's a little tip from me. If you are playing it on the PlayStation 3, play with L2 and R2 for acceleration and braking. Honestly, it's much more comfortable than driving with the right stick all the time. Now, let's talk about the AI. Honestly, I think that the AI is a bit weird. I like their aggressiveness to a degree, as they are trying to fight with you for positions. That means that they are not just focused on the racing line, which is a real positive thing. However, the AI is sometimes so aggressive that they tend to crash at every given point when there are more than 2 cars. Also, I somehow tend to crash into every single AI car, and even though it was a very small hit, they just lose control of the car and go off the track. This might be because the collision physics are just way too sensitive. Moreover, I noticed that they don't even know what a blue flag is, resulting in some hilarious moments at the beginning of the championship, when the AI is still easy to beat. There's also a funny thing I noticed. The gaps between the fastest cars and the slowest cars can sometimes be as high as 40 seconds, which is ridiculous and doesn't make any sort of sense in the context of the championship. So after we've looked into the gameplay, let's have a look into the graphics first. And to be fair, for a non-Sony game, the graphics do look good. The draw distance is good enough for a good vision of the track, and the car models do look acceptable. However, when there are multiple cars on the screen, the game unfortunately suffers from some sort of slowdown. But honestly, it doesn't really occur anywhere else, and isn't even game breaking after all. Also, that means that the game runs on consistent 30 FPS, which is fine for its time. Unfortunately, when Gran Turismo came out, you definitely noticed that the car models do look a bit worse, and the graphics overall are a bit more blockier than Gran Turismo. It reminds me of the very first Formula 1 game, where they used the low resolution graphics. It would take one more year for Codemasters to use the high resolution graphics for the sequel, TOCA 2. In terms of the sounds, I personally think that the car sounds are quite good for its time. Every car has a different sound, which resembles a Super Touring car at least. The sound of the Ford is actually really nice, and I really like the sound of it. And finally, you have Tiffany Dow, who's doing some voiceover before a race and doing qualifying and race results. In the first few minutes, it is quite nice and something fresh from the usual gaming, but his lines do get repetitive after a little while, especially the race results screen. And honestly, it is a bit annoying, but it's... well, you can't really expect so many different lines, I guess.
Let's see the championship standings. A great season so far then for the new Honda driver. At the moment he's putting the professionals to shame.
Overall, I still like this game a lot. Even though the handling takes some time to get used to, I still like the racing in this game. And the fact that it is a BDCC game makes it more unique, as there are not many BDCC games, except for TOCA 2 and maybe TOCA Race Driver. I will give this game a solid 7 out of 10. It definitely gives you a good immersion of being a BDCC driver back in the 90s. However, if you are a casual gamer who's looking for an easy racing game, this might not be your type of game. Therefore, the driving mechanics do take some time to get used to. Also, if you're looking for a TOCA game, the next two games are much better and even more polished in my opinion. But back then, it was a really good game alongside Formula 1 97, Gran Turismo 1, and another Codemasters game, called Rally. So that was my review of TOCA Touring Car Championship for the PS1 and for the PC. I hope you've liked it, and if you do, then do like this video, and if you want to see more reviews in the future, then subscribe to this channel. and we'll see you soon for the next review, which will be World Rally Championship for the PS2, a remake of my original review, so stay tuned for more.